Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, we preview soybean seed quality and size for 2026. Dylan has a harvest update on the West Point test plot. Hear about yield variation between wagon scale and combine yield monitors. And Ben answers questions he's gotten this week regarding harvesting down beans.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars, Ben, Dylan, and Lynn. And Dylan, you're going to give us an update on soybean seed quality and what's going on there.
Yeah, so most guys are starting to finish up on both corn and beans. It seems like around the area, or they can at least see the finish line. But what comes with that is a lot of seed samples and beans being treated. We've had really good weather for it, and as we move on through our seed samples, we're getting very good quality for the most part. Come in, it's going to be smaller than normal, but still like 31, probably I would say 3,100 seeds per pound is what we're going to be around. There's a few that are a little bit bigger, but then we've got some that are smaller, but I think those will clean out once we get them on a screen and then clean out. So we're going to be smaller than probably last year, but it's not going to be anything crazy small. So when you think about small, it's going to be 3,100, 3,000 probably, around that range.
Very ideal size for both seed company and the farmer.
Yeah.
No 65-pound Austin seed bags.
Well, the other thing too is you're going to get more seed in your planter boxes too. You know, your center fill or your boxes, and cover a little bit, plus a little bit less wear and tear on the back. So.
Yeah, and we, like last year, we saw quite a few beans dropping into the 8% moisture when they were coming into West Point. I would say this year everything's around that 10 to 11. So I mean, we're better on that side. So hopefully, like our splits and seed coats and everything, well, that should help on the quality side. You know, we thrive for that, so that should help a ton on that end. And then we're starting to get lot germs back from the seed plant. And so far everything's been in the high 90s. So we've really good quality coming out of the plant right now. They're going full blast treating seed. I know a popular one right now is Reagan Harrison Monroe. So those are hot numbers right now, and they've done really well this year.
Absolutely. I think when I think of that 3,000 seeds per pound, it's been, as long as I've been paying attention from a production standpoint, I don't remember a year quite like this one. It seems like we've been fighting big seed more years than not than we fight small seeds. So, and
slightly smaller seed, it doesn't split as easy. So the seed coats are a little bit harder. We get a lot of advantages, and that's why we're seeing the high germs. And you know, because once you get up to that, when you get 2,500, 2,400, the beans split much easier.
Yeah, and this is going from clear up to Neptunes all the way down to like our Denver and Memphis. We've seen beans all over our footprint, and all of them are around that size. So
a little bit drier finish, right?
Yep.
Looks like you got the West Point plot pulled out.
Yeah, so we also took the West Point corn plot out yesterday, or on Thursday, and this didn't have fungicide on it, so the yields are a little bit disappointing, compared to what we kind of see out in the real field.
Very relative.
Yes.
Very relative statement there.
Yeah.
Still a lot of 220, 230s.
Oh yeah. Yep. We saw experimental line, a 112 that really kind of took the plot, and then of course 112 day did really well, and then the one that kind of stood out, the 2411 at 38,000. So I guess back up, so we had a 22,000, 32,000, and 38,000 population in each hybrid that we had. So that way we can look at just see how they react to different populations, and then with the 2411, the 38,000 came in at number 3 in the plot. We kind of talk about that 2411 and needs population, and I really think we saw that come yield, because of the 22,000, it did 209, 32,000 did 233, then the 38,000 where we got population did 248. So we're seeing that step up, and that's what we've been kind of preaching with that hybrid.
It's just because how it makes its yield, right?
Yeah, yep, so it's going to be a little bit shorter ear on the numbers, or long, but we're going to get good girth, and then the kernels are where you're going to get your yield. We need a good finish with that. They're going to be really big kernels. So
yeah, that's about the only number that I can think of in our lineup that really in all reality should respond to the higher planting population. Because when you were getting ready to come on, I stole your sheet. It's like when you're at 22,000, it's not the highest. 32,000 is typically your highest yield, and then you go to 38,000, most of them pull back.
Yep.
So it's a nice bell curve on where we think we need to be at for a population standpoint. And when I talk to guys, when I'm making population recommendations, most of the time we do fall in that 32 to maybe 35,000.
Yep.
And I tell guys, I said, I'm pretty comfortable being able to pull this thing back if we need to be able to pull it back because of the amount of flex that these hybrids have. And I think the one anomaly where the lower population really kept up was in the 25-12, and that would be 2 years in a row at 22,000. It's done some pretty incredible things. So you don't have to push the population. That's one more way that you can probably watch your pennies this coming year.
Especially on marginal acre.
Yep.
And this is ground that's timber soil, lighter soil. So it's not the flat black that we normally see test plots put on. This is a little tougher acre too. So.
Right. No, I was pretty impressed with how the plot looked, and a lot of the things that we thought were going to come to fruition came to fruition, and there's not a ton of surprises that are associated with that plot.
Yeah, and if anything holds true with what we're seeing from on-farm studies, I mean, no fungicide, most likely 30 to 40 bushel you could add to that just from that managing it. But this gives us a good perspective on how particular products can handle stress, and we had no shortages of stress this year related to rust, tar spot, too wet, too dry. So a really good baseline there of some stuff that's got, like I said, the 25-12 to 22,000. Great stress package. And then we got guys that are cranking 300 bushel north of town here with flat black dirt. So it's doing exactly what we were told and have been telling people it's going to do.
I like it when there's no surprises.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. And one of the things that kind of ties into what you did here, because this plot is all taken off with a weigh wagon and a 4-row combine when we're doing that. This was passed on by one of our partners at Meristem just to prove this is one of their customers, I believe, in Minnesota. They pulled this off this year. It's a Pioneer test plot, and we can put the picture up here, but it shows yield monitor differences versus an actual weighed check. And the biggest swing, so at best they could get within 0.9 bushel of each other, but there's some huge differences. If you really want to figure out if a product's working on your farm, the best way to do it is scales on the grain cart. The second best way to do it is the weigh wagon, because weigh wagons can have a tendency to be a little bit of a pain in the butt. You can't do really long rows, but if you have scales that are calibrated on a grain cart, that is the absolute best way to check whether you are getting 2 to 3 to 4 bushel on any product that you're testing, because here's an example. They were weighing Pioneer 1027, a product we're very familiar with. The yield monitor said it was 268 bushel an acre. The actual weighed check was 282.4, so there's a 14.4 bushel difference from what their yield monitor told them compared to what the weigh wagon said. Dylan and I did a very similar thing when we were taking the Weaver plot off here. I had the feeder house plugged on me, so I stopped in the middle of the field. I think the reading came back. My combine said it was 264. Because you have a stop in the middle of the field, you lose your momentum and it skews what that yield monitor is going to tell you. 264 is what my monitor said. The actual weight came back at 281. So if you're really serious about trying to figure out whether a product is a positive return on investment or not, weigh scales, whether it be a weigh wagon or scales on your auger cart, is the absolute way to do it. Yield monitors are great for seeing trends in fields, but if you're not constantly calibrating them for each percent moisture change that you have, even then I don't think they are super accurate when it comes to getting the absolute difference when you're doing your checks. So
yeah, I think you made a great point. It's going to show you, most likely you're going to see some relative differences through it, but then you're going to have to do some further investigation into the actual, especially if you're doing a like a Meristem plot or something like that. If you're trying to figure out if you ran one strip down the middle of the field, if it actually worked or not, you definitely need to find a weight to it, not necessarily just off of that. It's probably going to give you a little bit of a response, relatively speaking, but to get to the finite, to get to the dollars and cents, you need to probably weigh that for sure.
Yeah, we have a scale company that checks our weigh wagons annually, because we know how important it is, particularly if we're doing calibration for a combine. If this weigh wagon is not weighing right, then the calibration is, it's all for nothing. So you got to have a scale that has been checked out that's weighing correctly to calibrate anything.
And I would, maybe advance that a little bit. Maybe if we're doing like really long stretches, maybe the grain cart would be the favorable thing. Most of the time, the grain carts are probably going to break on 20s or 50s.
Yep.
So that's always something to just keep in mind. If you're doing long runs, maybe that 20 or 50 pounds might not kill you, or change it that much. But like our way wagons here are break on 2s. So just something to think about.
Well, and I've noticed from a personal farming side, on anybody that's got a newer green combine that's got the active yield in it. For some reason, corn does a pretty accurate job of trying to calibrate itself and stay somewhat close. But for some reason, especially in dry soybeans, you might as well. Actually, we turned it off, ran through, calibrated back to scale tickets from the elevator, and was pretty close. But for some reason, when active yield is on dry soybeans, it really gets to fluctuating. So, brother-in-law, 770 combine was 25% low. Dylan actually came out, and before I realized or remembered it, we were calibrated to within 0.9. By the time we were at the end of the field, it was 15% off. So you can do everything right, but there's still some things, like you said, to this point in the monitor, that if something happens or goes awry, the active yield wants to try to overcome that, then your information is good. It's going to show you that the good spots and fields are going to be good, but it might overstate or understate depending on where you're at in that position.
100%. And the other thing that I've gotten a bunch of phone calls on this week is beans being down. And I think it's an industry, it's a climate issue more than anything. One of the things that Dylan and I look at very closely, I'm going to pick on Reagan as an example. Reagan is such an awesome bean. One of the things that we like about it is its standability. So when I'm looking at the charts and you're looking at the Reagan, it's I believe it's like 106, 109, and 111%, depending on which cut of the data that you're looking at.
Standability wise?
No, that would be from a yield standpoint. But the second thing that I look at after the weight or how high it yields is its standability percentage, and I believe it's like 105.4 or 104.5, whatever. So it's 4%. It has a 4% higher score on standability or lodging than what the average of that test is. So we really focus, because standability is the second thing that I look at, because if you have a phenomenal yielding product and it's rolling in the mid 90s to low 90s for standability, I mean, we had that on a couple 4.0s, 3.940s that we produced 2 years ago, and I absolutely scrapped them. We hauled them to the elevator because, they're phenomenal yielding products, but I can just feel the frustration in a lot of guys' voices when they call and tell me I'm picking down beans. I can only go 1.8, 1.9 mile an hour. They're cutting hard. I'm not getting them all up. It's just not, there's no sense having a high yielding bean if you can't get it in the combine. Right. So what that came from this year, I believe, is from a huge geography. We actually had pretty adequate moistures, and we had above average temperatures, and that's what late June, early July, mid-July, we had an abundance of rainfall with plenty of heat while that plant was still putting on lots of vegetative growth. That probably made the beans a time and a quarter taller than what they normally are. The season continued to progress. Storms came in, whether that be late July, early August, got them tangled up, and they've continued to go down, and they didn't stand back up. So there's definitely varietal differences. I mean, I've even had a few phone calls on the Reagans that were kind of mixed up and not standing perfect. But the products that have what I would call average standability, and on a normal year you would see them mixed up a little bit, but you can still get underneath them, those products are down this year. So just like when you have a bad disease pressure year, or you have a bad whatever year, a stressful year on something, this is going to be a good year for flushing out all of the products that aren't standing very good, because we're going to get really, really good lodging scores for this year, and we will cut the products that aren't standing, and we'll move forward with the best products that we have that are standing well. So
I'll back you up a little bit more too. In our area especially, we had almost too good of water early. That root development, the plant just did not need to, beans being tap rooted, some of that does help out. We just didn't didn't need to go down to find the moisture. The moisture was staying within that top 2 inches of the profile. So a lot of beans that I looked at, I would say in that April planted in that May and June timeframe, go to check nodulations. I mean, very prolific, a lot of fine root hairs, but nothing that was really driving itself down deep in the ground. And we see it with corn when we're looking at some stuff. If it doesn't have to drive that far, it won't. And lends itself to the end of the season. Not normally ideal if we get a really tall vegetative plant, some late season wind, or the best part, tall plant, a lot of weight, a lot of pods, it's naturally gonna, because we want a little bit of lean. That means it's high yielding, but some of these got maybe a time and a quarter, a little bit bigger than what it should have, and that root system just didn't quite get a chance to anchor itself down, but still phenomenal yielding product.
And don't forget, recheck your population too. If you change your population around a little bit on some fields, and as you plant heavier, you get faster canopy, but you also get more spindly type plants. So there's a trade-off there too. So check population, and I know farmers this year really wanting to watch their P's and Q's when it comes to costs. If you're planting 160,000 in 30-inch rows, you probably should be bringing it down, because you're going to have more problems with lodging. Of course, different soils. On light soils, that might be the right population. Because a lot of data suggests that you plant heavier in lighter soils and thinner on good soils.
100%. And if you can't quite get yourself to the point where it's going to drive you crazy sitting in the cab, please do some check strips on 100,000. Like, you're going to be surprised when the fall comes, because you're not going to be able to see those stand out on your yield monitor. Another good thing to weigh out too.
Yeah, and the reason why you plant thicker on lighter soil is because normally your beans don't get as tall.
Correct.
And then when you plant that thick on heavy soils, they get taller and then more lodgy. So
right.
You do just the opposite of corn with soybeans when it comes to population on soil types.
And I've been getting the phone calls, like I said, on the lodged beans for probably the past 3 weeks. And I've also been getting phone calls on the green stems. And it seems to me the more focus and the more phone calls that I've been getting on these green stems, it seems to be the areas of the fields that, one example, it's not even our beans, but an area of the field a field 2 miles apart, the exact same planting date, everything's the exact same. One of them had a little bit more water holding capacity. Those beans were tougher to cut because the soil type was just a little bit better. The plant set itself up for a higher yield because it was in a little bit better soil type. Didn't have the finish that we wanted it to have because it got so dry so quickly at the end, too much heat. This is the reason that the guys in the south desiccate their beans, because beans don't really like to naturally senesce or die down in super hot or super dry conditions. So we're getting a lot of those phone calls, but I tell guys I think the best thing to do is keep chewing through them, because I don't see a frost. And that's really what's going to be the finishing factor, is a frost, is what it's going to take to get the green out of them.
And don't forget, when you have green stems, what typically happened is the pods dried out, and then you basically got this pipeline of nutrients that's supposed to go into the pods and dump into the pods. And when the pod says, nope, I'm done, I'm not taking any more, all those nutrients and all the moisture and everything gets locked into those stems.
Right.
And then there's no place for it to go until, you get a frost. So when we were looking at fields above, from the air, we could see soil types differences. And then I bet you if you could lay your soil map down, you would find out your green stems are coming where your beans, the pods dried out faster than what the stem did.
Yep. And out of all of the comments that I've been getting on the green stems and the down soybeans, they're still yielding really well. So there's a silver lining. You're chugging along at 1.8 to 2 mile an hour on your soybeans, but they're yielding really well. So guys are fairly happy. It's just a little frustrating because you're not getting the output that you're normally getting on a bushel per hour standpoint. But you're getting your bushel per acre.
It's all cost. Every hour that engine runs, that's a big deal, and we understand that. And we do watch for green stem soybeans but there really is no rhyme to reason. It's environmental. And I'll give you one last story about when I was doing regional meetings. I did a meeting up by Bloomington, and back then it was Washington's, and the farmer came up to me and said, I really like the Washingtons, but man, they cut so hard, and they got green stems. That's the only thing I don't like about it. So that evening, that was a 10 o'clock meeting, that evening I was down in Onley, which is kind of southeast Illinois, and the farmer came up to me and says, I really like those Washingtons, and what I like about them best is they cut so easy. And I was prepared for it. He's going to say green stems. So I concluded that, what's the difference between Bloomington and Onley? Well, it's geographics, it's just environment. So a lot of these problems are environment. Don't necessarily blame it on the soybean.
Couldn't agree more.
I have one on that one too, just to end it on. Also check out your tillage practices too. Maybe if you check out on the root system, if you don't like that, see if you got a hard pan or something, because that's something we can fix right now, especially going into, if you use anhydrous, you're going to go across that with that knife and help take that out. But if you're in a no-till situation, might maybe have to look at a inline ripper or something to take a look there too.
Well, got anything else?
Nope.
Country road, take us home.
Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. Now, those of you that got a little bit of gray hair, you remember the hippie time, back in the 60s, long hair, easygoing, mellow. Okay, this is a lifeguard. Why couldn't the lifeguard save the hippie? He was too far out, man, in the ocean, Okay, there you go. All right. Now, I did a chicken.
We've resorted to memes. I don't know. Nobody can see it on the other side of the camera, but there's memes now.
Well, anyhow, a couple weeks ago I did a chicken joke, about, what kind of tennis shoes do chickens wear, it's Reebok,
Yeah.
Well, I found another chicken joke, okay? Why can chickens only make one sound? They can't think outside the box? Okay. Now, here's the last one. This is just an observation, something I noticed, okay? The weirdest thing just happened to me. It's really weird. I made a paper airplane and I threw it. But when I threw it, it just stayed in the air, hovering, which at that moment, I realized it was stationary.
Stationary is a kind of paper.
Did they teach you that in school? Stationary?
Well, we better quit. Anyhow, thanks for watching today, and all of you that purchase Merschman soybeans and corn and wheat, alfalfa, all of our products, we sincerely appreciate your business. We're ready to roll up our sleeves to help you achieve the yields that you want for next year, and we hope your family is safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.